Trapped by a ruthless criminal, Anya was forced to forge priceless art, risking her family's lives. Then, a powerful stranger exposed her darkest secret at an illegal auction. He wasn't a savior, but a mafia boss, offering her a gilded cage and obsessive protection. When she tried to escape his dangerous claim, she learned some traps are impossible to break. The scent of turpentine and aged canvas, usually a comforting embrace, now felt like a suffocating shroud in Anya Petrova's small, cluttered workshop. Dust motes danced in the slivers of weak afternoon sun that pierced the grimy windows, illuminating forgotten tools and stacks of repair requests she couldn't afford to touch. Her hands, long and elegant, trembled slightly as she meticulously worked on a hairline crack in a faded portrait. It was a replica, a cruel mimicry of a genuine masterpiece, and the knowledge made bile rise in her throat. Each brushstroke, each delicate application of pigment, felt like another stain on her soul. Her father, bless his artistic, if impractical heart, had left her this legacy, a workshop steeped in history, a name once whispered with reverence among connoisseurs, and a mountain of insurmountable debt. His grand, ill-fated ventures into speculative art investments had buried them alive. Now, 2 years after his passing, Anya was the sole anchor, and the anchor was dragging them deeper into the abyss. Her mother, frail and constantly battling a persistent cough, relied on Anya for every penny, every medication. And her younger sister, Lena, with her bright, hopeful eyes, still dreamed of art school, unaware of the devastating truth that tethered their existence to the whims of men like Viktor Volkov. Viktor. The name was a venomous whisper in her mind, a phantom chill that raised goosebumps on her arms, even in the warmth of the late summer day. He wasn't just a debt collector. He was a collector of broken souls, a predator who thrived on desperation. His visits were infrequent but memorable, each one leaving a residue of dread. She remembered his last visit, just a week ago, the way his expensive Italian leather shoes had scuffed her worn wooden floors, an unwelcome violation. His gaze, sharp and devoid of warmth, had swept across her workspace, lingering on the delicate tools, before settling on her with an unnerving intensity. Anya, he had purred, his voice like sandpaper. Your father's legacy weighs heavy, doesn't it? But talent like yours, it's a pity to let it waste. He'd laid out the latest assignment with casual cruelty. Not just another authentication of a questionable antiquity, but a full-scale restoration of a stolen Renaissance altarpiece, its true provenance hidden behind layers of fabricated paperwork. She'd seen the photo, the vibrant colors dimmed by time and trauma, and her heart had ached for the violated beauty. This one is sensitive, Viktor had explained, a thin smile playing on his lips. It needs your unique touch. Make it new yet old. Undeniably authentic, yet entirely untraceable. Anya had felt the blood drain from her face. But this is wrong, Viktor. This is a crime. He had merely chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. Crime? My dear, in this world, crime is merely a matter of who writes the rules. You concern yourself with art. I concern myself with survival. And your survival, Anya, and that of your dear mother and sister, hinges entirely on your cooperation. He had leaned closer, his breath smelling faintly of expensive cigars and something vaguely metallic like old blood. Think of Lena's tuition. Think of your mother's medicine. Think of what happens when a family loses everything, Anya. Every single thing. The image of Lena's bright smile fading, of her mother's weak cough turning into something terminal, had flashed before her eyes, sharp and agonizing. Anya had nodded, a silent, trembling capitulation. What choice did she have? Each refusal, each moment of moral resistance, was a direct threat to the only people she had left. Now, as she painstakingly worked on the fake portrait, her hands moved with the practiced grace of a master, yet her spirit felt utterly broken. The irony was a bitter taste on her tongue. She, a restorer sworn to preserve truth and beauty, was actively participating in their corruption. The weight of her complicity pressed down on her, a suffocating blanket of shame. Her workshop, once a sanctuary, had become her prison. She glanced at the stack of bills on her desk, then at the small, framed photo of her family, her smiling father, her gentle mother, and a young, carefree Lena. A deep sigh escaped her, heavy with resignation. The bell above the workshop door chimed faintly, a sound she hadn't expected. Her heart lurched, a frantic drum against her ribs. Victor. Already? But it was too soon for him to collect the age fake. She hadn't even finished the patina. She straightened, her spine aching, her eyes darting towards the door, bracing herself for another soul-crushing demand. This endless cycle of fear and humiliation was all her life had become. She wondered how much longer she could endure before the art and her own spirit faded entirely. There in Viktor Volkov's underground gallery was thick with a cloying sweetness, expensive cigar smoke battling with the faint, metallic tang of old money. It wasn't a true gallery, not in the traditional sense, but a clandestine auction house masquerading as one, tucked away in the forgotten catacombs beneath a historical district. Gleaming crystal chandeliers, surely stolen, hung precariously from the low vaulted ceilings, casting a deceptive glow on the collection of antiquities that lined the velvet-draped walls. The clientele was a melange of the city's elite and its shadowy underbelly, sleek, silent men in custom suits, women draped in jewels that glittered dangerously, all murmuring in hushed tones, their eyes sharp, calculating. Anya stood beside the central display, a pedestal draped in midnight blue velvet, upon which rested the evening's main attraction, a purportedly lost Renaissance miniature, barely larger than her palm, encased in a gilded frame. Her role was simple, yet agonizingly complex, to stand there, a silent testament to its supposed authenticity. She, the gifted restorer, forced to endorse a lie she had meticulously crafted herself. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic sparrow trapped in a cage. Every well-dressed face felt like an accusation, every hushed whisper a judgment. The shame, a familiar, corrosive acid, burned in her stomach. Victor, a corpulent man with a smile that never quite reached his eyes, moved through the crowd, radiating smug self-satisfaction. He caught Anya's eye, a fleeting, dismissive glance that was also a silent warning. Don't you dare deviate. She focused on the miniature, its intricate details a testament to her skill, even in deceit. The tiny, almost imperceptible brushstrokes, the aged cracks in the lacquer, the subtle variations in hue, all her handiwork, designed to fool the most discerning eye. The thought made her stomach clench with a mixture of pride in her craft and disgust at its application. A ripple, almost imperceptible, moved through the crowd near the entrance. Heads turned, conversations faltered, then died away. Anya's gaze, drawn by the sudden vacuum of sound, followed suit. And then he appeared. Dante Rossi. His name was whispered in hushed tones, always with a tremor of respect or fear. Anya had only seen his photographs in obscure art journals, always impeccably dressed, always with eyes that seemed to see through the camera lens. But a photograph couldn't capture the sheer lethal control of his presence. He wasn't overtly menacing, didn't stride in with a booming voice or an entourage of muscle. Instead, he moved with the predator's grace of a panther, his steps silent, deliberate, as if the very air parted for him. His charcoal suit, cut with a precision that bordered on art, seemed to absorb the dim light, making him a figure of stark, immaculate power. A slim silver watch gleamed at his wrist, the only concession to adornment. His face, sharp-angled and unyielding, was a mask of calculated indifference, but his eyes were dark pools of ancient knowledge, missing nothing, judging everything. He stopped several feet from the pedestal, his hands casually tucked into his pockets, yet radiating an undeniable authority that dwarfed even Victor's bluster. The auctioneer, a nervous man with a perpetually sweaty brow, cleared his throat, his voice suddenly thinner than before. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the moment you've all been waiting for. A rare discovery, a true gem of the Renaissance period, the Weeping Muse, authenticated by the esteemed Anya Petrova herself. Anya felt a fresh wave of humiliation wash over her as her name echoed through the hushed room. She risked a glance at Dante. His gaze was fixed on the miniature, intense, unblinking. He didn't look at her, yet she felt the weight of his scrutiny, an invisible pressure that made her breath catch. The bidding began, hesitant at first, then soaring, fueled by the prestige of the discovery and Victor's aggressive encouragements. When the bidding reached an astronomical sum, a figure that would free her family from debt 10 times over, Dante Rossi raised a hand. A hush fell. The auctioneer swallowed hard. Mr. Rossi, a truly exquisite piece, Victor. Dante's voice was a low, dangerous rumble, smooth as aged whiskey, yet carrying an undeniable edge that sliced through the polished veneer of the room. He didn't raise his voice, yet every syllable seemed to reverberate. The brushwork, the pigments, a master's hand, indeed. Victor preened, a self-satisfied smirk spreading across his face. Naturally, Mr. Rossi. A once-in-a-lifetime find. Dante's eyes, still locked on the painting, narrowed almost imperceptibly. Indeed. A shame it's a forgery. The words hung in the air, a shocking, devastating silence. Anya's blood ran cold. A collective gasp, a rustle of expensive fabrics, swept through the room. Victor's face, moments before flushed with triumph, turned a mottled crimson. Mr. Rossi, what preposterous accusation is this? Victor spluttered, his voice cracking with outrage, but a tremor of fear was undeniable. Dante finally looked up, his dark eyes meeting Victor's, and the room seemed to shrink around them. An accusation. No, Victor. Merely an observation. The artists, whoever they are, did an admirable job. Almost perfect. But the lacuna in the upper right quadrant, a detail only truly present in the original, restored in 1897 by a German artisan using a unique lead-based primer. A detail, I note, that is conspicuously absent from this version. Perhaps overlooked by your esteemed authenticator. His gaze, sharp as a surgeon's scalpel, flicked to Anya, cutting through her composure. Anya felt her stomach drop, her knees threatening to buckle. He knew. He knew her work, knew the true history of the painting, and knew her complicity. An involuntary gasp, small and ragged, escaped her lips, louder than she intended in the stunned silence. Her cheeks burned, not just from shame, but from the sudden, terrifying realization that this man, this dangerous, all-seeing man, had just laid bare her deepest secret. Dante's head turned slowly, deliberately. His dark, piercing eyes, which had just dissected Victor's fraud, now found hers. For a long, drawn-out moment, the world outside them ceased to exist. His gaze was unreadable, a fathomless depth of intelligence and something else, something that made her heart pound with a frantic rhythm. There was no pity, no judgment, only an intense, almost possessive scrutiny that made her feel utterly exposed, yet strangely, powerfully seen. It was a gaze that promised both peril and a strange, undeniable pull, a silent declaration that he hadn't just exposed a forgery, he had exposed her. Victor's enraged sputtering faded into the background, becoming a distant hum. All that existed was the intensity of Dante Rossi's eyes, holding her captive. She shivered, a tremor that ran from her scalp down to her toes. He was terrifying, magnificent, and utterly compelling. She couldn't tear her eyes away. Even as a terrifying thought solidified in her mind, she had just been truly, irrevocably noticed by a man who could either save her or destroy her. And she had no idea what she intended to do. The aftermath of the auction was a maelstrom of barely contained fury. Victor Volkov seated, his face a grotesque mask of purple and red. He had dragged Anya from the gallery, ignoring her pleas for privacy, into a cold, sterile office tucked away behind a tapestry. The air crackled with his rage, a tangible entity that pressed down on her, stealing the oxygen from her lungs. The expensive liquor on his breath, usually a subtle undertone, now reeked of desperation. You stood there like a stone statue, he roared, slamming his fist onto a heavy mahogany desk. A crystal decanter rattled precariously. You gasped. In front of everyone. Do you know what that man cost me tonight, Petrova? Do you understand the humiliation you brought upon me? Anya flinched, her hands clenching at her sides. I did nothing, Victor. He knew. He knew the truth. The words were barely a whisper, defiant yet fragile. The truth. He sneered, his eyes gleaming with a venomous light. The truth is what we make it, little restorer. And your truth, your performance, nearly cost me a fortune. It's a good thing I have leverage over you, isn't it? A pity for your sweet mother, your hopeful sister. His thinly veiled threat sent a fresh wave of terror through her. Her family. Always her family. That was the crushing weight that bound her to this monster. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice raspy, devoid of emotion. Victor leaned back, a predatory gleam returning to his eyes. He enjoyed this, the way her fear made her pliable. "A simple task, Anya. One that will redeem your failure tonight. Dante Rossi. He has a private collection, kept in a secure vault beneath his primary residence. Among his treasures is an ancient scroll, rumored to be an early, illuminated manuscript from the Byzantine era. I want it." Anya stared at him, aghast. "Steal? You want me to steal? From Dante Rossi? He's a Mafia Boss, Victor. His security is impenetrable." The sheer audacity of the demand stole her breath. This wasn't just a forgery or a shady authentication. This was outright theft from one of the most dangerous men in the city. Her life, already precarious, would be forfeit. Victor merely smiled, a chilling, humorless curve of his lips. "Precisely. Which is why you, with your delicate hands and your intimate knowledge of art, are perfect. No one would suspect a harmless restorer. You will gain access, you will locate it, and you will bring it to me. And if you refuse, or if you fail, your family will pay." Slowly, painfully, the words were delivered with a casual cruelty that made her stomach churn. He pushed a folder across the desk. "Details. Maps. Timings. You have 1 week." She stumbled out of Victor's office, the weight of his threat pressing down on her like a tombstone. The scroll. From Dante Rossi. It was a suicide mission, a direct path to the grave. Despair, cold and suffocating, wrapped around her. How could she possibly do this? How could she refuse? Just as she was contemplating vanishing into the night, leaving everything behind, her burner phone, the one Victor had insisted she use, buzzed. An unknown number. She stared at it, her heart pounding. Hesitantly, she answered. "Miss Petrova?" A smooth, calm male voice, unfamiliar yet carrying an undeniable authority, spoke. "My name is Marcus Thorne. I represent Mr. Dante Rossi." Anya froze, her blood running cold. Dante Rossi. Had he already found out about Victor's plan? Was this the end? "Yes," she managed, her voice barely a squeak. "Mr. Rossi was unimpressed by your eye for detail at tonight's regrettable exhibition," Thorne continued, his tone utterly devoid of judgment, almost clinical. "He requires a master restorer for his private collection. Discretion, of course, is paramount. The work is exclusive, long-term, and extremely well compensated. Would you be amenable to discussing terms? A contract." From Dante Rossi. Her mind reeled. This was a direct counteroffer, an invitation into the lion's den. A potential escape from Victor's clutches, but into whose? She pictured Dante's dark, piercing eyes, the way he moved with such effortless, predatory grace. He was dangerous, a man who clearly saw everything, missed nothing. Accepting his offer will be stepping directly into his world, into the orbit of his insidious power. I need to think," she stammered, her mind a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. "Mr. Rossi is not accustomed to waiting," Thorne replied, his voice firm, leaving no room for negotiation. "A limousine will be at your workshop at 8 a.m. tomorrow. Should you choose not to be there, we will understand. But the offer, Miss Petrova, will not be extended again." He hung up, leaving Anya in a terrifying silence. She spent the night pacing her tiny apartment, conflicting demands tearing at her. Victor's threats of slow, agonizing retribution for her family, versus Dante's chillingly precise offer. One was a known devil, the other an unknown beast, but both promised to consume her. Dante's offer was a tempting lifeline, a chance to get her family out of debt legitimately, to distance herself from Victor. Yet the price of that freedom felt high. She would be working for him, under his roof, exposed to his world. It was a different kind of cage, perhaps gilded, but a cage nonetheless. She would become his property, in a way, just as the paintings she restored would be. The thought sent a shiver of both fear and an unfamiliar thrill down her spine. The raw power of Dante, the way his gaze had claimed her at the auction, the sheer audacity of his move tonight. It was terrifying, yes, but also undeniably intriguing. Maybe, just maybe, this was her only chance. Her only way to protect Lena and her mother. It was a calculated risk, a treacherous gamble, but the alternative was a slow, agonizing demise. As dawn broke, painting the city skyline in hues of bruised purple and gray, Anya made her decision. She would meet Dante Rossi. She would enter his world. She knew deep in her gut that this wasn't just about art or money or even family. This was about something far more primal, far more inevitable. And as the first rays of sunlight touched her worn workshop, she felt a profound, unsettling sense of being claimed even before she had truly stepped into his domain. The limousine, a silent, sleek predator, had delivered Anya to Dante Rossi's world with the same cold efficiency it had approached her workshop. Her breath caught as she stepped onto the polished cobblestones of the villa's expansive courtyard. It wasn't merely a house, it was an estate, a fortress of old-world stone and dark would nestle discreetly behind towering wrought-iron gates, hidden from the city's prying eyes. Security cameras, subtle yet omnipresent, watched from every corner, making her feel less like a guest and more like an exhibit under constant surveillance. The air, crisp and hinting at distant pine, carried a faint, unfamiliar scent of expensive leather and something profoundly ancient. Inside, the villa was a breathtaking paradox, a testament to immense wealth and impeccable taste, yet permeated with an almost austere, masculine silence. High ceilings soared, adorned with intricate frescoes. Walls were lined with tapestries and original artworks that would fetch fortunes at any legitimate auction. Every piece of furniture, from the heavy carved oak tables to the plush velvet armchairs, seemed to carry a story, echoing the silent power of its owner. Anya felt small, insignificant, and utterly overwhelmed. Her old workshop, with its peeling paint and familiar clutter, now seemed a distant, comforting dream. Her new workspace was a revelation. Tucked away in a quiet wing of the villa, it was a pristine, state-of-the-art studio bathed in natural light from tall arched windows overlooking a manicured garden. Every tool, every solvent, every pigment she could ever dream of was meticulously arranged, gleaming under specialized lighting. It was a space designed for a master, and it both thrilled and terrified her. This was the gilded cage, she thought, the one she had chosen. Her first days were a blur of meticulous work and overwhelming silence. Dante Rossi was rarely seen, but his presence was a constant, palpable force. She would often find small, unspoken improvements, her favorite brand of obscure tea appearing in the kitchenette, a specially designed ergonomic chair delivered overnight, the subtle hum of a new filtered air system. No notes, no instructions, just silent provision. It was unnerving in its intensity, a demonstration of his reach and his unwavering attention. Anya buried herself in the work, painstakingly restoring a series of antique maps that Dante had acquired. Each delicate stroke of her brush was an act of meditation, a way to anchor herself in a world that felt increasingly surreal. She worked late into the evenings, the soft glow of her task lamp her only companion, the villa around her settling into a profound quiet. One evening, lost in the intricate details of a cartographer's forgotten coastline, she felt the shift in the air, a subtle deepening of the silence. She didn't look up, but her senses flared. The faint scent of expensive cologne, that same blend of leather and something primal, told her he was there. "Working late, Miss Petrova?" Dante's voice, a low, smooth rumble, came from behind her, making her jump despite herself. It wasn't a question, but a statement, laced with an unsettling possessiveness. She spun around, her heart hammering against her ribs. He stood in the doorway, a phantom in the dim light, leaning casually against the ornate frame. He was dressed in a dark silk robe, open just enough to reveal the taut line of his chest beneath, a stark contrast to his usual immaculate suits. His hair, usually precisely styled, was slightly disheveled, giving him a raw, dangerous appeal. He looked less like a corporate titan and more like the predator she knew him to be. "Mr. Rossi," she managed, her voice a little breathless. "Ah." I lost track of time. He pushed off the frame, stepping further into the room. Each deliberate step resonated in the quiet space. He stopped a few feet from her, his dark eyes fixed on her hands, then on the map. The Aegean, a treacherous sea, full of hidden currents and ancient tales of sirens. Fitting for a woman with dangerous secrets. Her breath hitched. He always knew exactly what to say to disarm and intrigue her. His words were a barbed hook, pulling at the threads of her past, her fears. "Ah, I don't know what you mean." A corner of his mouth tilted, a ghost of a smile that never quite reached his eyes. "Don't you? Your hands tell a story, Anya. Of precision, of patience, and of a deep knowledge of what lies beneath the surface. You brought life back to a lie at Victor's auction. You could bring truth to something real." He reached out, his long, elegant fingers brushing lightly against the edge of the map, directly over her own hand. The contact was brief, accidental yet electric, sending a jolt through her entire body. She yanked her hand back as if burned. His gaze sharpened, a flicker of something unreadable in its depths. "Forgive me," he said, his voice softer, yet still carrying that undercurrent of command. "I merely admire your skill." He moved past her, his presence utterly dominating the small space, and stood before another piece she was meant to restore, a tarnished bronze sculpture of a weeping angel. "This piece," he said, his voice almost a murmur, "was my mother's. She loved it. It was stolen from us when I was a boy. Recovered, but broken. Can you fix it?" Anya looked at the angel, then at his profile. The harsh lines of his jaw seemed softer, almost vulnerable, as he stared at the sculpture. A tiny, unexpected crack appeared in the formidable armor he constantly wore. For a fleeting moment, she saw not the ruthless Mafia Boss, but a boy who had lost something precious. It was a revelation, a tiny, fragile glimpse into a hidden wound. "I can try," she said, her voice surprisingly gentle. He nodded, not looking at her. "Good." He then turned, his gaze sweeping over her with that familiar, intense scrutiny that made her skin prickle. "Your family, by the way, is being looked after. Your sister's scholarship application was processed. Your mother's medical bills paid." Anya's eyes widened. "What? How?" Her mother's health had inexplicably stabilized. Lena's art school dreams, once impossibly distant, had suddenly materialized. She had dismissed it as a fortunate turn of events, a stroke of luck. But now, connecting the dots, a chilling realization dawned. It was Dane. He was orchestrating everything, silently, insidiously, weaving himself into the fabric of her life. "Consider it part of your compensation," he said, his voice flat, devoid of emotion, yet radiating an undeniable truth. "I ensure the well-being of those under my care. And you, Miss Petrova, are now under my care." The words were a hammer blow, both a comfort and a threat. She was safe, her family protected. But at what cost? She was his. His claim, once abstract, had just been made concrete. She was living in his gilded cage, her life inextricably bound to his, and a dangerous, undeniable current of attraction sparked between them, battling with her fear. He was a force of nature, a dangerous beast, and she was undeniably his. And she hated herself for the burgeoning flutter of excitement that warred with the dread in her chest. He paused at the door, his eyes still dark and unfathomable, locking onto hers. "Remember, Anya, in my world, loyalty is everything. and I protect what is mine with extreme prejudice. He offered another of his almost smiles, a promise of both danger and unparalleled security. Anya had settled into a fragile routine within the opulent confines of Dante Rossi's villa. The meticulous work in her pristine studio, the hushed elegance of her surroundings, and the unspoken safety of being under Dante's watchful eye had begun to dull the sharp edges of her perpetual anxiety. She found solace in the intricate dance of restoration, breathing life back into forgotten masterpieces, her hands moving with a practiced grace that felt like a quiet rebellion against the chaos of her past. Her mother's health had indeed improved, and Lena's letters from art school brimmed with an infectious, carefree joy Anya hadn't thought possible. Dante, through his silent provision, had given them that. The gratitude was a warm, surprising ember in her chest, constantly battling with the gnawing fear of his true nature. She was engrossed in cleaning a delicate, centuries-old tapestry, the aroma of a specialized cleaning solution filling the air, when her burner phone, the one she kept hidden, a relic of her life with Victor, vibrated with an unfamiliar number. Her breath hitched. A knot of ice formed in her stomach. She hadn't used that phone in weeks, had almost convinced herself she could forget its existence. Her fingers, usually so steady, fumbled as she answered. Silence. Then a distorted, metallic whisper, barely audible, like air escaping a punctured tire. Little bird, still singing in the golden cage? Your mother, she has such a lovely view of the park, doesn't she? So vulnerable. The voice was unmistakably Victor's, twisted by a voice changer, but the chilling undertone of menace was all too familiar. Anya's blood ran cold. He knew where her mother lived. He knew. Her carefully constructed facade of safety shattered. What do you want? She whispered, her voice trembling, laced with a fear so profound it made her entire body ache. Justice, little restorer, Victor hissed, the metallic distortion making him sound utterly inhuman. And my art, and you. Dante Rossi thinks he can just take what's mine. He will learn. And you, Anya, will be the lesson. The line went dead, leaving Anya clutching the phone, her knuckles white, her studio, once a sanctuary, now feeling like a trap. The scent of cleaning solution suddenly seemed cloying, sickly sweet. Her hands shook uncontrollably, the image of her mother, frail and unsuspecting, superimposed over the delicate threads of the tapestry. He wasn't done. He never would be. Later that evening, the anxiety still a cold, sharp blade twisting in her gut, Anya sat in the expansive, minimalist living room. She barely registered the crackle of the fireplace or the soft strains of classical music playing from unseen speakers. Dante entered, as he often did, a silent force of nature. He moved with that almost unnerving grace, a charcoal suit draped impeccably over his powerful frame. He poured himself a whiskey, the amber liquid glinting in the firelight. Something troubles you, Anya, he stated, his voice a low, perceptive rumble, not a question. He hadn't even looked at her, but he knew. He always knew. She hesitated, then, driven by a primal need to confess, to share the burden, she blurted out, Victor. He called. He threatened my mother. Dante's hand, holding the crystal tumbler, stilled. The air in the room seemed to solidify. He turned slowly, his dark eyes, usually so guarded, now alight with a cold, terrifying fury that sent a shiver down Anya's spine. It was raw, unadulterated rage, a glimpse of the true beast beneath the polished exterior. What did he say? His voice was dangerously soft, a barely contained growl. Anya recounted the call, her voice trembling, the chilling words replaying in her mind. Dante listened, his jaw flexing, a vein pulsing slightly at his temple. When she finished, the silence was deafening. He raised his hand, gesturing to an unseen guard. Ensure Mrs. Petrova's residence is secured. A full team, round the clock. No one goes in or out without authorization. And locate Viktor Volkov. Immediately, the commands were delivered in Italian, sharp and precise, like fatal blows. Just then, the grand doors to the living room swung open. A woman entered, her silhouette framed against the soft glow of the hall. She was stunning, tall, with a cascade of fiery red hair, a scarlet silk dress that clung to every curve, and eyes the color of emeralds that glittered with an unsettling defiance. The expensive perfume she wore, heady and exotic, filled the air, clashing with the subtle musk of Dante's presence. She looked directly at Dante. Then her gaze swept over Anya, a slow, disdainful appraisal that made Anya feel utterly insignificant, like a dusty relic. "Dante, darling, I heard you were entertaining a new acquaintance." The woman purred, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness, a hint of something sharp beneath. She ignored Anya, walking straight to Dante, placing a perfectly manicured hand on his arm. "Missing me already?" Dante's expression remained utterly unreadable, his gaze still fixed on Anya for a fleeting moment, a silent message passing between them before he turned to the newcomer. "Serafina, your timing, as always, is impeccable and unwelcome." Serafina laughed, a tinkling, brittle sound. "Always the charmer. But I heard about your little problem at the auction. And your solution." Her emerald eyes, now cold and sharp, flicked back to Anya. "So this is the weeping muse you've taken under your wing, the little restorer who authenticates forgers? Be careful, little bird. Dante's cages are often gilded, but they are still cages. And he's not one for sharing his toys." The thinly veiled warning, the casual dismissal of her worth, stung Anya. She felt a familiar burn of shame, mixed with a surprising, potent flash of jealousy. This woman was clearly from Dante's past, a part of his dangerous world that Anya was only just glimpsing. Dante's hand, which had been resting on Serafina's arm, now moved, gently but firmly removing hers. His eyes, now colder than Arctic ice, bore into Serafina. "Serafina," he said, his voice quiet, lethal. "You forget yourself. And you forget that Anya is not a toy. She is mine to protect. And anyone who threatens what is mine quickly learns the consequences." The air in the room crackled with an unspoken threat, a silent but absolute declaration of ownership. Serafina's defiant smile faltered, replaced by a flicker of genuine fear in her emerald eyes. She understood the implicit warning. This wasn't just a dismissal. It was a clear statement of territorial claim. Dante had drawn a line, and Serafina had just crossed it. "Understood," Serafina whispered, her voice losing its edge, her composure finally breaking under the weight of his absolute authority. She cast one last, withering look at Anya, then, with a curt nod to Dante, she retreated, her expensive perfume lingering like a poisonous vapor. Dante turned back to Anya, his expression still etched with a barely leashed ferocity. "Victor will be handled. Serafina is a ghost from a past I no longer entertain. Do you understand?" Anya could only nod, her breath catching in her throat. She understood. Dante had just demonstrated his supreme, unyielding power, his ruthless efficiency, and his fierce, unwavering possessiveness over her. She was terrified, but a strange, intoxicating warmth spread through her chest. He was dangerous, yes, but he was her danger, her protector. He had silently, unequivocally claimed her. The fear was still there, but now mixed with it was an undeniable sense of awe and a potent, thrilling realization she was safe at least from them. But was she safe from him? Could she ever truly be free of a man who so completely, so intensely owned her very existence? The villa, once a cold fortress, had begun to feel less like a prison and more like a strange, opulent sanctuary. Anya's days flowed with a rhythm dictated by light and shadow, the delicate demands of her craft. Victor's threats, though still a chilling memory, felt distant, muffled by the invisible shield Dante had erected around her. Her mother and Lena were safe, living a quiet life, their burdens lifted by an unseen hand. The gratitude was a profound, almost overwhelming sensation, a deep well of emotion that tempered her fear of Dante. She still felt the weight of his gaze, the constant hum of his presence, but it no longer paralyzed her. Instead, it was becoming a comfort, a dangerous, intoxicating comfort. She was painstakingly restoring a tarnished silver reliquary, its intricate filigree almost swallowed by centuries of neglect. The delicate work required absolute focus, yet her thoughts often drifted to Dante. The way his eyes, so often cold, could hold a flicker of something she couldn't quite decipher. The subtle, almost imperceptible shifts in his demeanor when he observed her work. He was a man of shadows and silence, yet she found herself increasingly attuned to his unspoken language. One afternoon, Dante entered her studio, a rare occurrence during her working hours. He carried a small, leather-bound journal, its pages brittle with age. He placed it on her work table, the soft thud echoing in the quiet space. "This needs to be preserved," he said, his voice low, "before it completely disintegrates." Anya, momentarily startled, looked up. He wore a simple black t-shirt today, stark contrast to his usual tailored suits. The fabric stretched taut across the powerful muscles of his chest and arms, hinting at the raw strength he usually kept concealed. Her gaze drifted to his left forearm, catching on something she hadn't noticed before, a pale, thin line of scar tissue, running from his wrist almost to his elbow. It wasn't a superficial scratch. It was deep, jagged, a violent reminder of a past trauma. Her breath hitched. What happened?" she asked, the words escaping before she could censor them. Dante's eyes, which had been fixed on the journal, snapped to her. A fleeting, almost imperceptible flicker of surprise, then something guarded, settled in their dark depths. He looked at the scar, then back at her. "A long time ago," he murmured, his voice devoid of emotion, "a lesson learned about trust and betrayal." He didn't elaborate, but the words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken pain. It was a crack, a tiny, fragile fissure in the formidable armor he wore, revealing a glimpse of the man beneath. It was enough to make her heart clench with a strange, aching empathy. From that day, a subtle shift occurred. Their interactions, though still infrequent, deepened. She found herself asking him about the provenance of certain pieces, drawing him into conversations about art history, about the silent stories held within each brushstroke, each carved line. And he surprisingly responded. He spoke of his family's collection, not with a detached air of a connoisseur, but with a quiet, almost reverent pride. He shared anecdotes about his grandfather, a man who, like him, had collected not just art, but power. One evening, a storm raged outside, rain lashing against the tall windows of the villa, the wind howling like a hungry wolf. Anya was working on a reliquary, struggling with a particularly stubborn patch of corrosion. Dante found her there, long after the household had retreated into the vast silence of the night. He simply watched her for a long time, the only sound the rhythmic tap of her tiny hammer, the rasp of her microfile. "That reliquary," he said, his voice cutting through the storm's fury, "it held a lock of hair from a saint. Or so the legends claimed. My grandmother believed it brought protection." He paused, stepping closer, his shadow falling over her work. "She was a devout woman, a believer in miracles, and in the unwavering protection of her family." Anya looked up, meeting his gaze. In the soft glow of her task lamp, his eyes seemed to hold a vast, ancient sadness. "Did it protect them?" she asked softly, daring to pry a little deeper. He let out a short, humorless laugh. "From some things, not from others." He picked up the journal he had brought earlier, idly flipping through its brittle pages. "This belonged to my father. He wrote in it every day. Thoughts, observations, regrets." He closed the journal with a soft thud. He believed that knowledge was the ultimate power. But he learned too late that some knowledge comes at a price. His gaze intensified, locking onto hers, like knowing the truth behind a beautiful lie, or seeing the vulnerability in a woman who tries so desperately to be strong. Anya felt a blush creep up her neck. He saw her, truly saw her. Her carefully constructed walls, built from years of hardship and fear, felt like they were unraveling under his relentless scrutiny. You see a lot," she whispered. "I see everything," he corrected, his voice a low, dangerous rumble. "Especially when it comes to you." He stepped closer, reaching out, his finger tracing the delicate silver filigree of the reliquary, then moving, almost imperceptibly, to brush against her knuckles. The contact was electric, sending a shiver through her. It wasn't just physical desire. It was a profound, consuming need that radiated from him, a desperate yearning to possess and protect. "I'll watch over what is mine, Anya," he said, his voice barely audible above the storm, his eyes burning into hers. "Your mother, your sister, their well-being is assured. Your future is with me." It was a statement, not an offer. A declaration of an absolute, unwavering claim. Anya's heart pounded, a frantic drum in her chest. The air between them was thick, heavy with unspoken desires, and the sheer weight of his will. She felt a strange mix of fear and exhilaration. His obsession, once terrifying, now held a powerful, intoxicating allure. To be seen, to be protected with such fierce, uncompromising devotion, it was a siren song, pulling her deeper into his dangerous current. She knew with chilling clarity that this was not just about saving her. It was about his need to own her mind, body, and soul. And a part of her, the part that had been so long adrift in fear, was beginning to crave that very possession. He leaned in, his breath warm against her ear, the scent of him dark, masculine, dangerous, filling her senses. "You are more than just a restorer, Anya. You are a masterpiece. And masterpieces belong in my collection." His fingers gently, possessively, brushed a stray strand of hair from her face, his thumb lingering on her cheekbone. The unspoken question in his eyes was clear. "Do you understand the depth of my claim? Do you accept it?" Anya's gaze locked with his, and in that moment, as the storm raged outside and a new kind of storm brewed within her, she realized she was not just falling for him, but falling into an abyss from which there was no return. And a part of her, the most reckless part, didn't want to be saved. The soft glow of the studio lamp had become Anya's anchor. Weeks bled into months, each day deepening her unexpected, terrifying comfort within Dante's world. Her work thrived, her hands coaxing secrets from centuries-old canvas and crumbling parchment. The relentless fear of Victor had dulled, replaced by the profound, almost overwhelming sense of security Dante's presence afforded. He was a paradox, a man of immense unspoken power, capable of chilling ruthlessness, yet also capable of a silent, almost tender provision that had mended the broken pieces of her life. She found herself watching him, her gaze lingering a beat too long, her heart fluttering whenever his dark eyes met hers. She was falling irrevocably, dangerously. She knew it. And a part of her, the reckless, vulnerable part, no longer wanted to fight. One crisp autumn evening, a rare lull in Dante's schedule, he had invited her to join him in his private study. The room was a testament to his intellect. Towering bookshelves filled with ancient texts, a sprawling antique desk littered with obscure maps and historical documents. He was discussing a potential acquisition, a series of rare Byzantine mosaics, and Anya, utterly engrossed, offered insights into their restoration challenges. A genuine smile, rare and breathtaking, had touched his lips, making her heart skip a beat. It was a moment of pure, shared passion, a glimpse into a potential future that felt almost impossibly real. Later that night, unable to sleep, her mind buzzing with the possibilities he represented, Anya wandered through the silent corridors of the villa. A sliver of light escaped from under Dante's study door. He often worked late, she knew. She debated turning back, but a strange, irresistible urge pulled her forward. Perhaps he needed another opinion on the mosaics. Perhaps she just wanted to see him again, to bask in the subtle warmth of his presence. She pushed the door open gently, expecting to find him at his desk. But the study was empty, the air still thick with the scent of his expensive cologne and old books. A single desk lamp illuminated a stack of documents, carelessly left open. Her eyes, drawn by the stark contrast of white paper against dark wood, scanned the top page. Her breath hitched. The words jumped out at her, stark and chilling. Volkov Holdings, complete liquidation. Assets seized. Debts transferred. Family holdings collateral. Anya felt a cold dread creep up her spine. Liquidation. Seized. Collateral. The language was clinical, but the implications were brutal. It was Dante. He hadn't just dealt with Victor. He had systematically, utterly destroyed him. Not just Victor himself, but his entire financial empire, his family's assets, everything. She remembered Victor's threat, his desperate grasp for power, and a new, terrible realization dawned. Victor hadn't just disappeared, he had been erased. And Dante had done it. For her. Her hands, suddenly trembling, reached for the documents. Below the summary of Victor's downfall was another file. Its contents made her stomach churn, threatening to betray her. These weren't just business dealings. These were reports. Reports of disruptions, of unforeseen obstacles being removed. Names, dates, locations. And one name chillingly familiar, a rival art dealer known for his cutthroat tactics, who had recently vanished without a trace. His gallery mysteriously shuttered. A man Dante had once expressed quiet disdain for, calling him a nuisance. The pieces clicked into place, forming a mosaic of terrifying clarity. Dante didn't just operate on the fringes of the law. He was the law in his world. His protection wasn't benign. It was absolute. His provision wasn't just generosity. It was ownership, enforced with an iron fist, capable of snuffing out lives as casually as extinguishing a candle. The warm ember of gratitude in her chest died, replaced by a bitter, searing cold. Betrayal. The word echoed in her mind, sharp and agonizing. She had dared to trust him, to believe in the glimmers of vulnerability she thought she'd seen. She had convinced herself that his darkness was merely a facade, a necessary evil in a dangerous world. But this was cold, calculated, ruthless destruction. He hadn't saved her from Victor. He had merely replaced one master with another, a more powerful, more terrifying one. She wasn't cherished. She was just another prized possession, secure by any means necessary, even lethal ones. Her breath came in ragged gasps. The scent of old books now seemed to cling to her like a shroud, suffocating her. This wasn't the man she thought she was falling for. This was the beast, unmasked, stripped bare of the illusions she had so desperately clung to. The thought that she had willingly, naively walked into this gilded cage, allowing him to dismantle her old life only to ensnare her in his own, was a new, profound kind of heartbreak. He had orchestrated everything, from her sister's scholarship to her mother's care, not out of love, but out of a need for control. A need to claim what he deemed his. She had to get out. The thought was a desperate, primal scream in her mind. No. Before she became utterly lost, utterly consumed. Before she became just another statistic in his ledger of obstacles removed. Her eyes darted around the study, a frantic, desperate search for an exit, for a way to undo her terrible mistake. The villa, once so safe, now felt like a tomb. She grabbed her small, unassuming satchel, her most essential tools, a few clothes. Her heart pounded a frantic rhythm against her ribs, a drumbeat of pure terror. She moved like a ghost through the silent corridors, each creak of the floorboards, each distant hum of the ventilation system, sounding like a thunderclap. The surveillance cameras, once comforting in her silent vigil, now felt like eyes burning into her very soul. She reached a side door, rarely used, leading to a secluded garden path. The night air hit her face, cold and sharp, a shock after the oppressive warmth of the villa. She ran, heedless of the dark, her bare feet scrambling over the damp earth. The shadows stretched long and menacing around her, whispering warnings she should have heeded months ago. The heavy gates, usually guarded, stood open just a crack, likely left ajar for a late delivery, a momentary lapse in Dante's impenetrable security. A stroke of luck, or perhaps a cruel twist of fate. She slipped through, her small body barely fitting, tearing the delicate fabric of her dress. Freedom. The word tasted like ash and triumph. She ran down the winding, secluded road that led away from the villa, her lungs burning, her mind screaming a single desperate plea: escape. Get away. A distant car engine rumbled, growing louder, closer. Her heart leaped into her throat. Was it him? Had he already discovered her flight? She glanced back, fear a cold, paralyzing hand at her back. The imposing gates of the villa, now a dark silhouette against the pre-dawn sky, seemed to mock her. She didn't dare stop, didn't dare look again. She had to keep running, had to find a way out of this nightmare. Suddenly, a blinding flash of headlights cut through the darkness, screeching to a halt just inches from her. Black van, not Dante's familiar limousine. The side doors slid open with a terrifying hiss. Two hulking figures emerged, their faces obscured by the shadows, but their intent clear. They moved with brutal efficiency, grabbing her, their hands like iron clamps. A rough cloth, smelling faintly of chemicals, was pressed over her mouth and nose. Her last thought, as darkness enveloped her, was of Dante. She had run from one devil, only to fall into the hands of another. Or perhaps, worse, into the hands of a ghost from her past. The pre-dawn chill was unforgiving, biting through the thin silk of Dante Rossi's pajamas. He had walked into his study, drawn by an inexplicable unease, only to find the door ajar, a single lamp illuminating the scattered documents on his desk. The file on Viktor Volkov's complete liquidation, the very evidence of his relentless eradication, lay open. And then he saw it, Anya's workstation, the delicate reliquary half restored, her tools neatly arranged, but her presence, that vibrant, vital spark, utterly, chillingly absent. A cold dread, sharp as a stiletto blade, pierced through the carefully constructed calm he always wore. He checked her studio, then her private quarters. Empty. The silence of the villa, usually a testament to his control, now roared with a primal alarm. He found the side door barely ajar, leading to the secluded garden path. A faint scuff mark on the damp earth, a torn thread caught on a rosebush. She had run. Fury. It wasn't a slow burn. It was an inferno, instantaneous and all-consuming. His entire body tightened, every muscle coiling with a savage intensity he rarely unleashed. How dare she? How dare she defy his protection, run from him? And then, beneath the molten rage, a sickening fear began to coil. If she had run, it meant she had seen. She had understood. And if she had run, she was vulnerable. Exposed. He punched the intercom button on his desk, his voice a low, dangerous growl. Lorenzo. My study. No. An activate condition, Black. Find her. Now. Within moments, the villa, usually a tomb of quiet efficiency, erupted. Footsteps thudded on marble. Voices barked orders in urgent Italian. Lorenzo, his imposing head of security, a man whose loyalty was carved in stone, appeared, his face grim. She's gone, Dante stated, his voice devoid of emotion, yet vibrating with a terrifying intensity. She saw the Volkov file. And then she ran. His eyes, usually pools of obsidian calm, were now blazing with a raw, desperate light. Find her. Use everything. Every asset, every contact, every dark corner of this city. Viktor Volkov. He is behind this. I want him. Lorenzo didn't flinch. Yes, boss. Already mobilizing. Surveillance footage of the perimeter is being reviewed. Our network is already tracing Volkov's known associates. He's been laying low, but no buts. Dante roared, his control finally fracturing. He slammed his hand down on the desk, the heavy wood groaning under the impact. She ran from me, only to fall into his hands. If a single hair on her head is harmed, Lorenzo, I will burn this city to the ground. Piece by piece. You understand. Understood, Lorenzo replied, his voice firm, his own eyes hardening with a chilling resolve. The hunt had begun. Anya woke to a searing pain in her head, her mouth gagged, her wrists bound tightly behind her back. The air was thick with the stench of mildew, damp concrete, and something vaguely metallic. Her eyes, blurry at first, adjusted to the gloom. She was in a vast, decaying warehouse, its corrugated iron roof shedding rusted tears onto the cracked floor. Broken crates, forgotten machinery, and the husks of ancient vehicles were scattered like industrial skeletons. Cold. So incredibly cold. Well, the little bird awakens. Viktor Volkov's voice, no longer distorted, echoed in the cavernous space, a chilling, triumphant cackle. He emerged from the shadows, his face pale and drawn, but his eyes gleaming with a manic satisfaction. He wasn't the polished dealer she knew. He was a desperate, cornered animal, more dangerous than ever. Did you enjoy your little flight, Anya? Your golden cage with your mafia prince. Tears streamed down her face. Terror, pure and unadulterated, seized her. She struggled against her bonds, a futile, pathetic effort. Oh, don't bother, darling, Victor sneered, kicking a rusted bucket near her. The metallic clatter reverberated. Those knots were tied by my associates. Very thorough. Not like your art, which seems to have a habit of being exposed, doesn't it? He paced before her. A gaunt, menacing silhouette. Dante Rossi thinks he owns everything. He thinks he can destroy me, steal my assets, claim my prize. But he forgot one thing. A man who has nothing left to lose is the most dangerous kind of man. And now I have you. He knelt before her, his breath foul. He'll come for you, of course. That obsessed brute. And when he does, he'll find you. And he'll find out what it means to truly lose something irreplaceable. What it means to have his precious little work of art ruined. His hand, clammy and cold, reached out, his fingers brushing menacingly close to her face. Anya recoiled, her heart screaming in silent protest. Dante was a man possessed. Hours blurred into a relentless, high-octane blur of activity. His office had transformed into a command center, a symphony of flashing screens, crackling radios, and hushed, urgent conversations. His men, a legion of shadows, worked with a silent, deadly efficiency. Every known hideout of Victor's, every obscure connection, every digital footprint was being systematically torn apart. The city's underground buzzed with a frantic energy. A mafia boss was hunting, and his rage was a palpable, terrifying force. Found him, boss. Lorenzo's voice, usually calm, held a tremor of urgency. A warehouse district, old industrial zone, Sector 7. Used to be a distribution hub for illegal goods, now mostly abandoned. We have heat signatures inside. Dante was already moving, grabbing his jacket, the suppressed Glock 19 a familiar weight against his side. His face was carved from granite, devoid of anything but absolute, lethal focus. Prep the teams. Silent approach. No heroics. I want Viktor Volkov alive, but barely. His voice was a cold, deadly whisper, a promise of retribution. The convoy of black SUVs moved through the pre-dawn streets like sharks through dark water, engines rumbling low, lights off. Dante sat in the lead vehicle, his eyes fixed on the flickering GPS screen. His hands, usually so steady, were clasped together, the raw desperation a tight knot in his chest. Anya. His Anya. The thought burned, consuming every other emotion. The betrayal, the anger, all faded beneath the primal need to reclaim her, to ensure her safety. He wouldn't just save her, he would reclaim her utterly and irrevocably. The warehouse district was a desolate wasteland of rusted metal and crumbling brick, bathed in the sickly yellow glow of distant streetlights. The scent of decay and damp earth hung heavy in the air. Dante's men, ghosts in the night, fanned out, their movements precise, silent. Heat signatures confirm multiple individuals, boss. A voice crackled through Dante's earpiece. One primary target, several others. And a smaller, weaker signature, possibly female. Dante's jaw clenched. Anya. His pulse pounded, a frantic drumbeat of dread and anticipation. He moved like a shadow, his mind already mapping the interior, anticipating every possible threat. He was a force of nature, a storm of controlled violence, unleashed for one purpose, her. They breached the main entrance, a swift, brutal assault. The warehouse erupted in chaos. Shouts, the muffled thud of bodies, the sharp crack of suppressed gunfire. Dante moved with chilling efficiency, a blur of dark-tailored suit and lethal precision. He didn't just fight, he dominated. Every punch, every kick, every calculated move was designed to incapacitate, to eliminate. He was a force of pure, unadulterated rage, protecting his territory, reclaiming what was his. Caught a glimpse of Victor, a frantic, desperate figure scrambling behind a stack of crates, dragging Anya by her bound wrists. Her eyes, wide with terror, met his, and in that fleeting moment, the raw, visceral connection between them surged, a silent scream of desperation and a promise of salvation. Victor! Dante's voice, a raw, guttural roar, filled the cavernous space, echoing off the iron beams. It was a sound of absolute fury, a warning that reverberated in the very foundations of the building. Victor, startled, stumbled, pulling Anya down with him. He fumbled for a weapon, a rusty pipe, his face contorted in a pathetic snarl. "Stay back, Rossi, or she gets it." I swear, Dante didn't hesitate. He moved with the speed of a striking viper, closing the distance in 3 long strides. Before Victor could even complete his threat, Dante's hand snapped out, seizing the pipe with a crushing grip. A sickening crunch echoed as the cheap metal buckled under his strength. Victor screamed, a pathetic, high-pitched wail of pain and fear, as Dante twisted the pipe from his grasp, his eyes blazing with an almost inhuman light. He threw the pipe aside, then grabbed Victor by the front of his grimy shirt, lifting him effortlessly off the ground, pinning him against a cold, rusted pillar. Victor's feet dangled uselessly, his face pale with absolute terror. "You touch her again," Dante hissed, his voice so low, so utterly devoid of warmth, it was more terrifying than any scream, "and I will tear you apart, piece by agonizing piece. Do you understand, you pathetic worm?" He released Victor, letting him fall to the ground in a crumpled heap, sobbing uncontrollably. Dante didn't spare him another glance. His eyes, burning with a singular focus, were already on Anya. He knelt before her, his hands, usually so precise, fumbling slightly as he untied the rough ropes binding her wrists, then gently removed the gag. Her lips were bruised, her eyes red-rimmed, but she was alive. Salvation, swift and brutal, had arrived. "Anya," he breathed, his voice rough with emotion, his thumb gently wiping a tear from her cheek. He pulled her into his arms, possessive, almost crushing embrace. She was shaking uncontrollably, but she clung to him, burying her face against his chest, her sobs muffled by his silk shirt. The scent of him, expensive cologne, gun smoke, and something profoundly masculine, filled her senses, a strange mix of terror and profound relief. He was dangerous, a monster, but he was her monster. He had come for her. He had claimed her. Dante held her tightly, one hand stroking her hair, the other pressing her closer, as if to physically absorb her back into himself. His gaze, cold and hard, swept over the chaos his men had wrought. Viktor Volkov lay whimpering on the floor, surrounded by his unconscious or battered thugs. The storm had passed, leaving behind destruction and a profound absolute silence. The rescue had been a whirlwind of brutal efficiency, a blur of Dante's men moving like shadows, the sharp, metallic tang of fear and adrenaline. But once Anya was back in the villa, the adrenaline receded, leaving behind a hollow, aching emptiness. Her body shook, not from cold, but from a deep, agonizing tremor that seemed to originate from the very core of her being. The memory of Victor's taunts, the oppressive stench of the warehouse, the rough cloth over her mouth, it all replayed in an endless, horrifying loop in her mind. Sleep offered no escape, only fractured nightmares of shadowy figures in suffocating darkness, from which she would wake in a cold sweat, her throat tight with a silent scream. Dante was a constant, formidable presence. He didn't leave her side for the first 2 days, his imposing figure a silent sentinel in her opulent bedroom. He brought her warm broth, holding the spoon patiently to her lips when her hands trembled too violently to hold it herself. He smoothed her hair from her forehead, his touch surprisingly, infinitely gentle. His dark eyes, usually so sharp and calculating, held a profound, unwavering concern that surprised her more than any act of physical tenderness. He spoke little, but his presence was a blanket of absolute security, suffocating yet undeniably comforting. "You're safe now, Anya," he murmured once, his voice a low, rough rumble, as he watched her jump at a sudden gust of wind rattling the window pane. He held her hand, his fingers strong and warm around hers. "No one will ever touch you again." It wasn't a promise. It was a decree. A terrifying, beautiful declaration of his absolute ownership. Anya clung to that fragile sense of security, even as her mind wrestled with the horrifying truth of what she had witnessed, what Dante was capable of. He was a monster, yes, but her monster. Dangerous paradox. He had destroyed Victor brutally, completely, and a part of her, the part that had screamed in terror for her family, felt a chilling satisfaction. But another part, the one that valued beauty and truth, recoiled from the sheer, unforgiving violence of his world. As the days slowly unfurled, marked by the careful, almost ritualistic care Dante provided, Anya began to mend. The tremors lessened. The nightmares receded into distant whispers. She found herself craving his presence, the quiet strength that radiated from him. She still flinched at loud noises, but a soft touch from his hand, a quiet word from his lips, could calm the frantic beating of her heart. One evening, as she sat curled on a plush sofa in his study, a blanket draped over her, Dante returned from what she knew were his affairs. His suit, as always, was immaculate, but his eyes held a cold, hard glint she hadn't seen since the warehouse. He poured himself a drink, the clink of ice cubes loud in the quiet room. "Victor Volkov," he began, his voice flat and motionless, "is no longer a threat. His operations have been dismantled. His assets seized and distributed to my various associates. His debts collected. And he himself, let's just say he's now intimately acquainted with the consequences of underestimating Dante Rossi and of harming what is mine." Anya shivered, despite the warmth of the fire. She didn't need the gory details. The chilling finality in his tone was enough. He hadn't just defeated Victor. He had erased him, systematically, ruthlessly, ensuring that the man who had tormented her for so long would never again cast a shadow on her life. It was a demonstration of power so absolute, so terrifyingly complete, that it stole her breath. "And his men?" she asked, her voice a reedy whisper. Dante took a slow sip of his whiskey, his gaze fixed on the flickering flames. "They have learned their lesson. My reach, Anya, extends far beyond the confines of this villa. No one who has ever posed a threat to you, or to what I deem valuable, will ever resurface." He turned, his dark eyes locking onto hers, intense and unwavering. "The world you fled, the shadows that haunted you, they are gone. Forever. I have made certain of it." A profound sense of security washed over her, so potent it almost brought tears to her eyes. She was safe, truly safe, not just from Victor, but from the entire predatory world he represented. Dante had burned it all down for her, swept away every last vestige of her pain. But with that security came an equally profound and terrifying realization. She was now irrevocably bound to him. She was his, a precious artifact, meticulously restored, and now enshrined in his most private, most protected collection. He walked towards her, his movements silent, deliberate. He knelt before her, his powerful frame filling her vision. He reached out, his hand gently cupping her jaw, his thumb stroking her cheekbone. The touch was possessive, yet so achingly tender, it made her heart ache. "You are healing, cara mia," he whispered, his voice rough with an emotion she couldn't quite name. "And you are mine, every piece of you. Your talent, your spirit, your heart. I salvaged you from the abyss, Anya. And in return, you are claimed. Eternally." Her breath caught. The Italian endearment, whispered with such raw intensity, sent a wave of heat through her. She gazed into his dark, fathomless eyes, seeing not just the ruthless Mafia Boss, but the man who had protected her with a ferocity that defied reason, the man who had healed her with a patience she never thought he possessed. The terror of his ownership warred with the intoxicating warmth of his devotion. She knew there was no escape, no turning back. She didn't want to. She reached out, her fingers trembling slightly as they brushed against the strong line of his jaw. "And what about you?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Am I your ruin or your salvation?" A slow, utterly captivating smile, a genuine curve of his lips that reached his eyes, spread across his face. It was a rare, precious sight, transforming his formidable features into something breathtakingly beautiful, even as it held a hint of danger. "You, Anya," he murmured, his voice husky, "are both, and more. You are the one thing I never knew I needed to possess. The one thing I cannot live without. My obsession. My destiny." He leaned closer, his gaze burning into hers, his desire a palpable force that enveloped her. "And now that I have claimed you, my masterpiece, I will never let you go." Months unfolded, each one a testament to the new, exhilarating rhythm of Anya's life. The villa, once a gilded cage, had transformed into an undeniable home, a sanctuary built on Dante's unwavering devotion and her growing fierce acceptance. The scent of turpentine and old canvas still filled her studio, but now it mingled with the subtle, comforting aroma of Dante's presence, a blend of expensive cologne, dark coffee, and something undeniably primal and masculine. She worked tirelessly, not out of fear, but out of passion, her hands now free to create and restore beauty without the shadow of illicit demands. Her family thrived. Lena sent postcards filled with vibrant sketches from her art school, and her mother's letters spoke of a quiet, contented life free from worry. Dante had fulfilled his promise, erasing every vestige of her past fears. Anya often found herself reflecting on the journey, on the terrified girl who had inadvertently broadcast her reckless thoughts, who had run from one devil only to fall into the arms of another. But Dante wasn't just another devil. He was her devil, a force of nature who had claimed her with brutal honesty and protected her with a ferocity that defied all logic. His possessiveness, once a terrifying chain, now felt like an unbreakable shield, wrapping around her, making her feel utterly invincible. She had once sought freedom from him. Now she found her truest freedom with him. Their life wasn't conventional. Dante was still the Mafia Boss, his world still shrouded in whispers and shadows, in deals struck behind closed doors and power wielded with absolute authority. But the quiet sanctity of their home, he was hers. He would often find her in the studio late at night, his steps silent, and simply watch her work, a faint, almost imperceptible curve to his lips. He'd bring her a glass of wine or a cup of herbal tea, placing it silently on her workbench, his fingers brushing hers with a tenderness that sent shivers down her spine. These small, unspoken gestures, more than any grand declaration, solidified the deep connection that now bound them. One crisp winter evening, a blanket of fresh snow lay sparkling over the villa's grounds, muffling the city's distant hum. Anya sat by the roaring fireplace in Dante's study, a rare, leather-bound volume, open on her lap, but her eyes were fixed on him. He sat across from her, seemingly engrossed in a financial report, the firelight casting dancing shadows across his sharp features. He was dressed casually in a cashmere sweater that somehow made him look even more formidable, less approachable, yet entirely irresistible. She felt a warmth spread through her chest, a profound sense of contentment she had never believed possible. She was no longer afraid of the shadows that clung to him. She had learned to find comfort in them, to understand that they were merely extensions of his protective embrace. He had taken her broken pieces, the shame, the fear, the desperation, and forged them into something new, something strong, something entirely his. And she, astonishingly, reveled in it. He looked up then, as if sensing her gaze, his dark eyes locking onto hers. A flicker of that intense, all-consuming possessiveness she now knew so well ignited in their depths. He closed his report, placing it meticulously on his desk and rose. He walked to her, his movements fluid, deliberate, the very air seeming to thicken with his presence. He stood before her, his hands reaching out, gently cupping her face. His thumbs stroked her cheekbones, his touch sending a familiar surge of heat through her veins. "You look at me," he murmured, his voice a low, rough caress that sent shivers down her spine, "as if you can still uncover secrets. But there are no more, Anya. Not between us." Anya leaned into his touch, her eyes meeting his, filled with a newfound strength and an undeniable love. "You are my greatest secret, Dante. The most dangerous and the most beautiful." A genuine smile, rare and breathtaking, touched his lips, transforming his formidable face. "And you, Karamia," he whispered, his voice husky with emotion, "are mine, my obsession, my solace, the beating heart of my world, my greatest masterpiece, painstakingly restored and cherished beyond measure." He lowered his head, his forehead resting against hers, his breath warm against her lips. "I vow that no one would ever harm you again. That promise stands. For all time. You are safe. You are protected. And you are eternally mine." He drew back slightly, his eyes burning into hers. "There are no more questions, no more doubts. Only this. A future built on my claim and your acceptance. Are you ready for that, Anya? To be truly, utterly, completely claimed." Anya's heart swelled, overflowing with a fierce, overwhelming acceptance. The fear was gone, replaced by an unwavering certainty. She knew the darkness that lived within him, but she also knew the profound, unyielding love he offered, a love that encompassed every part of her, even the broken pieces. "I am ready," she breathed, her voice filled with a conviction that resonated deep within her soul. "I am yours, Dante. Forever." He captured her lips then, a kiss that was both a promise and a declaration. It was deep, possessive, yet filled with a tenderness that brought tears to her eyes. It was the taste of forever, of a bond forged in fire and shadows, an unbreakable claim that defied all conventions. Outside, the snow continued to fall, blanketing the world in a pristine, unblemished white. But inside, in the warmth of Dante's embrace, Anya knew that their love, born from a dangerous secret and claimed by a mafia boss, was a masterpiece of its own, vibrant, powerful, and destined to last an eternity. Sometimes, our greatest strength isn't found in avoiding the darkness, but in allowing ourselves to be seen within it. Anya's journey reminds us that even when forced into shadows, our true worth shines through, waiting for a love fierce enough to claim it, strong enough to heal it. Just like a priceless masterpiece meticulously restored, your past pains don't diminish your value. They make your story richer, your spirit more resilient. You deserve a love that protects fiercely, understands deeply, and sees your beautiful imperfections as precisely what makes you uniquely cherished. If Anya's story resonated with a part of your soul that longs for profound connection and unbreakable security, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Share your thoughts in the comments below. What does unconditional love mean to you? Let's build a community where every heart, no matter its scars, believes in its eternal claim to love.